March 15th. He comes to me at night, horrible, ugly, dirty, under the sheets with me, tearing at my nightgown with his steel claws. His name is Fred, and he keeps trying to take me to the boiler room. He wants to kill me.
Special work to do here, you and me. You've got the body. I've got the brain.
Hello, and welcome to Comic Book Bears Presents The Bear Cave of Terror. I'm your hairy, heavy homo and horror fan host, Steve Morey. Each week here in the Bear Cave, I invite a horror-loving guest who brings with them one of their favorite scary movies. It can be classic, gory, trashy, obscure, well-known, or something probably still banned in Britain. In other words, a thrilling work of cinematic terror that we think that you might enjoy. In each episode, we'll dig into the flesh and bone of the film, highlighting our favorite scary moments, as well as stories and details from beyond the screen, all while our guest imparts their deep and possibly concerning love for this week's frightful vision unto you, our dear listener. And joining me again in the Bear Cave is our good friend, Mike Lovins. Mike, thank you so much for coming back.
Hello, Steve. I'm glad to be back. That was terrible.
Freddy is
that
here
was
in the
terrible.
room.
Terrible.
Oh, I'm not cutting it out. Oh, no, that's
no,
staying
great,
in.
Great. Cut. No. Hello. Thanks for having me back to continue our adventure here with the laughable, lovable Freddy Krueger.
Yeah, I mean, everybody's favorite dad jokey, just dude down the street who happens to slaughter children and steal their souls for his power, you know.
We all would if we could.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what else are you going to do on the weekend sometimes? The economy being what it is, things are expensive. It's easier to just invade people's dreams and steal their souls through, causing their deaths.
When they say, live in the dream.
Live in the dream, exactly. Or live in other people's dreams.
Live in other people's dreams.
Oh, and so because we are continuing with Elm Street, we're actually going straight to number 2. That's the movie that we're going to be watching this time is A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2, Freddy's Revenge.
Revenge.
Yeah, and interestingly enough, this is the one I think most people kind of either skip over or forget, but I'll explain why that is a bad choice, because this is actually not a terrible movie.
I can't remember if I said this when we were talking about the first one, but this one was my introduction to the franchise. So I saw this one first. So I definitely wouldn't skip it.
No, I mean, for a lot of people, depending on the time that you were growing up or how old you were allowed, at what age you were allowed to watch it, this is definitely one of those movies that I think a lot of people did see first, or at least pretty early on. And of course, if you were watching them in the theater, this was the second one. So I'm sure that if you saw the first one, you definitely saw the second one. We'll talk about that too. So if you could give us a little synopsis about this film, what happens in this first sequel to the original Nightmare on Elm Street 2, Freddy's Revenge?
Well, this time around, we have a Scream King that has moved into Nancy's house, and he is now the plaything for Freddy. We get a little bit more of the backstory of Freddy, but this is a Freddy Krueger S&M nightmare.
That is certainly a way to describe it for sure.
Yeah.
I think that's a good way to describe it. We have obviously we have some more teens to use as fodder for Freddy's antics. And, the fact that we're back in the house from the first one, that's also some, a little bit of continuity there, because this one, unfortunately, there's no Nancy. John Saxon does not make another appearance in this one. This is a whole new cast, with the exception of Robert Englund returning as Freddy.
Yeah, which is, I think in a way is kind of bold for a sequel and for, a burgeoning franchise. To not have anybody except your bad guy return.
Yeah, having him as, and I get that as a villain, as a monster, he's instantly, lovable's not the right word here, but he's instantly something that people will gravitate to as like, that is a scary character. But, again, this being the first sequel, I think there was some nervousness originally about like, well, how are we going to do this? They wanted to do a sequel. That was never in question. After it released and did such a great box office for what it was, the original film, they kind of wanted to jump into that second one. They're like, what are we going to do? We got to somehow bring Freddy back into the mix, but then we've got to expand it a little bit, do something a little bit more crazy.
Now, I think, though, I had heard somewhere that it wasn't a guarantee, though, that it was going to be Robert Englund as Freddy, which I can't even imagine that. But, you think about with Freddy and with Jason, you can swap them out all day long because it's masks. But even with makeup, I feel like it would still be off-putting. Maybe the very first sequel, if it had gone beyond that, though, and then they changed him up, I think that would have been an absolute no-go. But I can't imagine anyone else being Freddy Krueger.
No, and I think you're right. Like, one of the things that kind of initially, they were working on with the sequel, because they had to kind of rush. They rushed the sequel into production as fast as they could.
Yeah.
Just because they were like, hey, we got a good thing going here. We want to hit on this momentum. And there was the concern like, okay, well, we're bringing Freddy back, but maybe Robert Englund, and maybe we're not going to have him. We can do more with the makeup. It's fine. We can get somebody else in that. And with the way the script is written, then maybe, we won't even really need a Freddy, because we've got this plot device happening. But I think the fact that they were like, well, don't mess with it too much. So really, all they ended up doing is refining the makeup a little bit more and giving, I think, Robert Englund more say in his character. So like allowing him to explore the character a little bit more, change up the physicality a bit, maybe the way that he says things.
I was gonna say he had more like zingers.
Yes, like he was. The first one, the first one definitely had its moments where he's not the regular, kind of evil monster protagonist. He does have a couple witty insults, or at least, some interesting ways of saying things. But in the second one, he's given a little bit more humor. It's punched up a little bit so that he's a bit more of a character, and not just a, evil monster.
What's interesting is that really Wes Craven didn't have anything to do with this one.
No, they tried. They did reach out to him, but he was like, nah.
Yeah, I do feel like you kind of feel that a little bit, but I also kind of think that it was somebody else's influence that kind of started us down the road of having kind of a snarky, more of a one-liner kind of a Freddy that really, I think, kept going throughout the rest of the franchise.
Yeah. And I think when we talk about Nightmare on Elm Street 3 eventually, we'll see that they really did continue that and expanded on that quite a bit more, so that Freddy is the real star of the Nightmare on Elm Street series by the third one.
Yeah.
Where it's like, all the other teens, all the other whatevers, they will have guest stars, will do all these great things, but it all kind of rides around Freddy and how his interactions, the way he kills, his victims, and, the goofy things that he comes up with at some point. I think that becomes more of the drive of the character of the film itself.
Yeah.
This was written by another gentleman. It was David Chaskin, I believe.
Yeah.
And right away, I mean, very different from Wes Craven. Very different type of writer, very different focus in this film. That I think makes it a little bit difficult for some people, because there was a particular subtext to this film that he kind of added for humorous effect that really became, well, text. For better or worse, just in part because of the choice of the star, but also the direction. And the director here was Jack Sholder. So this was one of his, I guess, first films as a director. And I think and I might be leaning a little bit too much into the documentary made about this film, Scream, Queen, in how I feel about how Jack Sholder approached the direction on this film.
As in, he knew what he was doing.
Yeah, well, but there's the thing too. Like, if you ask Jack had no idea, and he's like, I was clueless to the whole everything. Whereas every other apparently production member was
I saw that too, and I don't believe that
he couldn't. He's not that obtuse.
I think it was a wink. Yeah, I had no idea.
I had no idea this. It's like, really, everybody else on set can see what direction you're giving or not giving, and I think that kind of, for better or worse, created some of the feeling and the I guess maybe the perception of this film. Again, for better or worse, because I think right now people are more approaching this as the cult classic that it should be, rather than kind of, I would say, the late 80s and 90s sort of idea of how to feel about this film that kind of came out afterwards.
Yeah, so this came out in 85, and I may have seen it around like 88. So Dream Warriors had already been out, but I hadn't seen it. And I think I wanted to see it so bad, but then my friend of mine was like, well, I have part 2. Let's watch it. So, because that was middle school for me. So Mark Patton played Jesse, the main guy, and I could sit here and rack my brain for hours, and I couldn't tell you anything else he was in. Like, I don't feel like this movie did his career any favors.
Right.
But also, I loved him in this. For what he was, you would never convince me that his character was actually straight, and that he had, any actual romantic interest in
Lisa.
Lisa, that's right.
Yeah.
Want to be, I know there was some rumor that she kind of got cast because she kind of looked like a young Meryl Streep.
And she does. Jason and I sat and watched the documentary together, and that was like, he immediately clocked that. Especially in certain angles and with certain makeup.
Yeah.
She looks like a slightly younger spitting image of mid 1980s Meryl Streep. It's wild.
I can't mention anything else she's been in either. So.
Well, and I think with horror movies, it's kind of tricky anyway.
Yeah.
Like, you have people, character actors or actors who become famous because of particular horror movies, and then that's kind of all there. For better or worse, they tend to be typecast in that.
I know I'm probably being a little unfair, because I could probably say the same thing about certain people in Friday the 13th movies or whatever. For every Patricia Arquette and Kevin Bacon, you get the person who is at every convention because that's their claim to fame. It's just those movies.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's so the actress is Kim Myers, who played Lisa. For the cast, you have Robert Russler, who plays Ron Grady or Grady, and then you have Sydney Walsh playing Carrie, who's Lisa's friend. So it's basically the core 4.
Yeah.
But you've also got some character actors like Clu Gulager is in there, Marshall Bell, who plays the coach. He actually doesn't look too bad for the coach. We'll get to him too.
Yeah, but I'm sure we will.
But yeah, I mean, for the chunk of these characters, the majority of these actors, you don't really see them outside of at least this genre much.
Right.
Maybe TV, especially in the 80s. So a lot of TV cameos and shows and soap operas.
I was just going to say, was Robert Englund still doing V at this time?
No, V had already finished. I know the miniseries had definitely finished, but I think there's the TV series.
Because I was going to say they had the 2 miniseries and then the TV series, which I don't know, by 85 it may have still been running a little bit.
Yeah.
But maybe not. But there again, did you watch that show at all? Or have you seen it?
I watched the miniseries. I did not watch the one season, like the season-long TV series.
The difference between his characters, between Willie and V and Freddy and Elm Street, you couldn't have 2 completely different characters, which just speaks to Robert Englund's talent.
Obviously now he's most recognized for his horror roles, especially for Freddy. And happily, he does lean into that, and he does acknowledge it's like, hey, this is my biggest character. I'm gonna enjoy the fame that comes with that as well.
Sure.
So
Sure.
I think if the second one had not done well and he didn't continue as the Freddy character, and like reading into a lot of the background on on these films, that kind of rumor that he was not going to be recast as Freddy continued through the fourth one. So there was talk that he's not going to be coming back for the next one, or he's not going to be coming back for the fourth one or whatever. I think that kind of ended by the time he played Freddy for the fourth time. It was like, no, this is his character, this is his baby. He's nobody can really replace him. And by that point too, you also had the TV series Freddy's Nightmares, and
Well, and Nightmare on Elm Street 3 and 4, like 3, 4, and 5 are so interconnected.
Yes.
That if they had switched between 3 and 4 who played Freddy, that would have really been jarring.
Yeah. And, that I think it's a risk for Robert Englund. It's a risk, I think, for the studio, for New Line Cinemas, when they were like, you know what, we're going to keep him on this. Like, we're going to put as much focus on Freddy as we can. The few zingers he had there, like, okay, we can laugh to it. But, with increased number of zingers, or like more screen time, which he has a lot of additional screen time in this one, especially towards the end, like the last quarter of the movie, Freddy's out and about. Like, he is in the real world. He's running around the party. He's, there's a lot of visibility there. And I think if that didn't go over as well, and there are some issues with that scene and sort of the characterization of Freddy at parts, but I think just making him more visible added to his marketability, added to the way that people perceived Freddy as like being out there, and I think helped some of the surreality that came in the later movies, where he was appearing alongside normal people, or like people that weren't expecting him there. And I think we could talk a little bit more about that in Nightmare on Elm Street 3, when people from the real world start making appearances in Freddy's nightmares, that he becomes more of a fixture, I think, in this one. Paid off for Robert Englund, so
yeah.
and for fans.
I mean, the movie had a budget of $3 million.
Mm-hmm.
And made $30 million, which, most movies these days hope they make $30 million for opening weekend. But for 1980, I guess 4 at the time that they were making it, if you were to, adjust for inflation or whatever, I don't know what the number is. I'm not an economics major, but it did pretty well.
Yeah.
It did pretty well.
The statistic they had on this was that it did 150% better than the first one in terms of box office draw.
And that's what you want with a sequel.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, so many sequels don't do as well as the original. That's a shame, but that's how you build a franchise, man. You got to get more people out to see the next one than you did the first one.
And they did. And I think, one of the philosophies that they were working with in the second one is they wanted to appeal to a bigger mainstream audience, not just genre fans, but to other people who maybe aren't normally into horror films. They also wanted to push that envelope a little bit more for a younger audience. I mean, they were, already sort of courting 20-somethings and college-age kids and whatnot. But, by the time of the second one, and again, definitely in the third one, they were looking to really grab more of a teen attention, like a teenager audience. And for R-rated movies, it's kind of tough to do, or at least it was back at that time. But they succeeded. They brought people in who normally wouldn't be seeing horror movies because they had either heard about the first one or were just excited about the characters and kind of the youth focus on this film. So
hey, they got me.
Yeah, there you go.
They got me with it.
Yep. And, I think if the other thing that everybody really needs to realize about this one, however well you feel about it, if this wasn't as much of a hit as it was, we never would have had more.
No, which really would have been a shame, because part 3 is my favorite.
Yeah.
So if we had never had that, I would have been bummed. But again, this being the first one, the first one that I saw, really made me excited then to go back. After seeing this, I had rented then the first one and moved forward from there to the
Yeah.
to the third one. But I think this franchise kind of growing up with home video, I think really benefited it too, because I'm willing to bet that a lot of people that went out and supported this second movie maybe didn't see the first one in the theater, but had gone back to, this new thing called Blockbuster, rented the first one. And so you had a growing audience then.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. VHS, VHS, I think, saved the movie industry in the 80s. Really, especially when you look at the number of sequels and franchises that became huge in the 80s, is you could make bank at the box office, but then you could make even more with home video through rentals, through actual purchases, people buying these movies and so they could watch them over and over again. And then if you came up with a sequel, guess what? Now you've got the expanded audience who found you through the video store. But I think, with this one, after it made a lot of money. It was not exactly critically acclaimed, but then not many horror movies were, especially in the 80s. But I think some of the negative backlash, the really negative backlash, that kind of pushed this down into a different category, started not too long after it had been out for a couple weeks. Some of the commentary centered negatively around the star and around his character. And yes, we've got a Scream King this time around, but they focused very clearly on certain actions, the certain, particular direction, and of course some thematic elements, and said, you know what? Something about this is pretty gay. And in the 80s, when you called something gay, or when something had a whiff of the homosexual about it, it instantly became a pariah. Like it was bad, because this is right in the height of the AIDS crisis. We've got people who are big cheerleaders for the anti-gay rights movement, who are preaching all over the place. You got 700 Club every night on TV. So there's a lot of, I guess, negative social cachet when you have something labeled as being gay. And, the fact that the star actually was a gay man, not out publicly at the time, but just rumors of that can kill somebody's career.
I was nowhere near being out myself at the time, seeing the movie. And I hate to just be like stereotypical, but like his screams, and, he wasn't the most masculine fella, which is fine, obviously. But I guess what I'm trying to say by that is that, to me, it felt like things were done on purpose. They say that they didn't know what they were doing or were so surprised. But somebody wanted to see what they could get away with.
Right.
And they saw it in their actor when he was cast, and they went with that. And I don't know. That's just my conspiracy theory,
Yeah. And between whether people blame David Chaskin as the writer who admitted many times that he put in a lot of gay subtext as a joke, very openly, like saying like, yeah, I thought it was funny, to put this kind of this sort of side feel of like, oh, this thing's going to be pretty gay, or we're going to have, we're going to have him go to a leather bar and, look like a lost little teen, and then have the coach come by.
Pup.
Yeah. Lost a pup. Yeah. And then have the coach, take him back to school, and they're going to be in the showers, like just little things. And also, of course, there's the famous dance scene with Touch Me All Night by Wish featuring Fonda Ray, just having him dance. And that, again, the director Jack Sholder had every opportunity to say, let's not do that, let's try something else. But there he is, in tidy whities,
pop gun orgasm.
It's very, and now like people see that for just the camp, value of it. And it's like, it's funny. It's great. At the time when I saw it, I didn't think anything about anything sexual on that, because I was young. I was like, 9-10 years old when I was watching it. So it's very similar to, Tom Cruise in Risky Business, where he's dancing in his underwear. Like as a kid, that's kind of what I equated it to. and didn't really see it as gay, but apparently a lot of people, once it was pointed out to them, then immediately were like, "Oh yeah, it's super gay." Ugh. And he screams like a girl, so gay. For me though, as an adult watching it, there's a lot more gay innuendo that if you were looking for it, you could absolutely hear it. Some of my best quotes that I found: "There's something trying to get in me," like that. Yeah, you're right. Freddy's trying to get inside you, buddy.
Yeah.
And like certain things, he's always blowing Lisa off so he can go hang out with his friend Grady, and like
Right.
he goes into his room at one point, like towards the end when his transformation is almost complete.
Also, how did he get in there?
I don't know how he
Anyway,
got in there.
Side tangent, but how did he get in there?
Did he climb through the window? Like, how did he get in? And here's Ron Grady in nothing but posing briefs, like just in his race car bed, which I thought was great. But like, so you'd rather be with your shirtless jock best friend than your girlfriend who is ready to like jump your bones. Yeah, we see that.
I've never been there. Wink, wink.
Wink, wink. But, other times too, like early on, there's, jokes about him like, "Oh, it's so gay." Talking about the coach, because the coach likes torturing his boys and like he's into that kind of stuff. He goes to that bar, blah, blah, blah.
Oh, yeah.
Which is true. The coach is also like, he is into leather and alternate sexuality, and also has balls fly at his face a little bit later on.
Exactly. Yep.
Sliced up, being chained to the shower wall, getting whipped / sliced by Freddy, and that's clearly the writer who threw that in.
Right, and that's where I come back to, though, saying that the director says he didn't know, but I think he did, because he could have changed any of that. Maybe not have him dancing around, faux masturbating. Just have him play air guitar.
Yeah, and I get the joke being that like he does that, and then here comes his girlfriend, just walks in like,
right.
"Oh, he saw you making a complete fool out of yourself." Yeah, air guitar, he could do the same thing. Just put him in briefs too, and have him do air guitar. And of course, that's also embarrassing. They wanted to make it a little bit more risque, or allow him to to do whatever, and he just kept dancing. Like Sholder didn't yell cut, or let's try it again. Let's take another take.
Yeah,
but. Yeah, it is what it is, and unfortunately it did have a negative effect on the actor's career. And Mark Patton, after this, there were a lot of also personal issues, personal crises that were happening at the time, so this was just not the right time for basically him to be branded as gay based on his character choices in this film.
Yeah, and I will say, now, and like between that documentary and just other things I've heard him speaking up about what he went through and all that stuff, I give him all the credit in the world for being, I don't want to say courageous and brave, but yeah, putting his story out there like that, that's tough.
Yeah,
that's tough.
Especially giving this message to the same industry and in a way the same people that kind of drove him out of not just the closet, but also drove him out completely of Hollywood. Like he left. I think he now lives in Mexico. There's a lot of reasons why he left and didn't go back for 20 some years. But thankfully, he's able to go be at those conventions and see a lot of fans and, participate in the enjoyment of this film again, where I'm sure that for decades he couldn't, just because of what it did to his career, but also because of like the social miasma that exists out there when people think of certain films. Like this was thought of negatively for such a long time, and probably by people who had no idea why. They were like, "Oh yeah, I heard this was the crappy one," or "I heard this was the gay one," and that's bad somehow.
Yeah.
Like, who cares if it's the gay one? It's awesome.
Look, if you don't like the gays, then watch it just so you can see one of them get tortured. I don't know.
Sure. There you go.
There's your reason to watch it. But yeah, just like Mark Patton, maybe didn't do a whole lot after this for personal reasons or whatever. Seeing him embrace the convention circuit and all that also kind of makes me think about how Robert Englund, who had a lot of success from this, be it almost entirely in this franchise, but he also embraces those conventions. And I love that too. Like, there's one person who could be bitter that being in this movie didn't make his life better, and there's somebody else who could be bitter that being in this franchise didn't allow him to branch out and be in Broadway and all that stuff. But they're both at a point where they're like, this is what people know me from. I'm happy to see my people.
And not just know, but love them from. Like, there's just a lot of, not just respect for the roles, but also just affection for these characters and a real love for these actors who have brought these characters to life. And, when it comes to these types of franchises, like between Friday the 13th and Nightmare on Elm Street and Halloween, a lot of times it's a different set of characters each time, except obviously for the monster. For all the different kids that have been in there, like every single one of them is celebrated for, the 15 minutes of screen time they have before they're sliced to pieces or whatever happens to them. And it's pretty cool. It's a really interesting, lasting legacy that exists for some actors who didn't have a huge career afterwards, and some that went on to do a lot of things. I mean, Patricia Arquette, Nightmare on Elm Street 3 was her first role, her first major film role, and now she's in Hulu miniseries about real life monsters. I mean, there's just a lot to be said for having a horror franchise where people really enjoy what kind of characters they bring to life. And Mark Patton, I absolutely respect him for the job that he did in this one, and also that it took him, a long time to come back and actually be able to see it in a different light.
I mean, so despite my love of this movie for being my introduction to the franchise and all that stuff, I definitely have problems with the movie. None of those have to do with anybody who's in the movie. And what grinds my gears. This, I think, is going to go to the writing. And I think this also really shows the lack of Wes Craven's involvement in this movie. And that it's the first movie really set up what happens when someone's asleep, the dream world versus when you're awake. When somebody who is awake sees somebody in the first movie being killed while they're asleep, they'll see the person thrashing around or cuts just showing up or whatever, but they don't see Freddy. And this movie kind of threw a lot of that out the window with Freddy being in the real world and in the awake world and specifically like the party scene and that just and there's so much of this movie too where I think it starts after he comes out of Jesse's body, and maybe it even happens before that too, but there's a lot of times in this movie where Freddy's claws are directly out of his fingers and not with the glove. And that's always bothered me. The glove is so iconic, and it didn't have the history that it did then, obviously. Then it didn't have the history that it does now, but those things really just bother me. And I'm not going to say that it makes that movie unwatchable for me now, but it really just, that's one of my pet peeves with any franchise, when they set up rules and they don't stick to them.
Right.
You can do whatever you want in your world, but be consistent.
Right. And I think Wes Craven not being involved in this film makes that pretty obvious. And, also going back to what we talked about for the original Nightmare on Elm Street, Wes didn't think of this as a horror movie. He thought of it more as a fantasy film. And I think in the second one, they kind of get the fantasy out, like that goes out the window. It's not so much the dreams that are important here. It is how Freddy is manipulating the real world around him. And doing it through Jesse. So like Jesse basically, when he falls asleep, he sleepwalks essentially, or allows Freddy essentially, Freddy then takes over his body. And then eventually that becomes real and Freddy really comes out of his body.
And I really like that concept there. Kill for me. Freddy says that and that concept is fantastic. If they'd stuck with that, where in the end, it actually was Jesse being the one doing all the killing, and then Freddy kills him, gets his revenge. I don't know. If Jesse had died at the end of the movie,
yeah,
kind of would have liked it.
I know that they wanted to do something uplifting, especially after the last film but then they still made it kind of depressing at the end, because at the end, it all is for naught because the school bus goes back to hell, essentially. Just like as a repeat from the first part of the movie. It did give them an opportunity to be a little bit more creative with like the makeup and the effects, in a way where they weren't as much trying to get as much blood out there as they could, but they wanted to get some of the gross out. Like some of the body horror really kicked up a notch in this movie. And I'm thinking, not just about, the fact that you have a part where you have Jesse's head, he's like opening his mouth and there's an eyeball inside. It's supposed to be Freddy's eye. That is actually the physical, like the effects designer's girlfriend's eye. So Mark Shostrom, who did a lot of that. He was the one who actually created the whole effect of bursting out of the body. Like that was all his. And the same thing with Kevin Yeager, who took over the makeup duties in this film. He also did some refinement on Freddy's skin, especially made it a little bit thinner and more contoured towards the face. And, it was a process that kept happening like with each subsequent film, like making it more and more look like Robert Englund than just sort of like a creepy character.
Right.
There were some interesting choices playing with the practical effects and the effects, and I'm really focusing on the baby-headed dog things. In the factory. It seemed like there was a whole scene that explained that, and that just got cut.
It does feel that way. Yeah, I agree.
Because they just kind of show up. Lisa's walking into there and she's like, ew, like, if those are really disgusting, and then moves on.
Yeah.
But of course there's a weird cat thing that gets eaten by a rat. Like there's just all sorts of things that happen with creatures, but Freddy doesn't really use creatures. So it was like, where did these come from?
Yeah.
What is that?
It's almost like they wanted to try and have like a Cronenberg sequence or something.
Mm-hmm. Make it more like expand.
Yeah.
Maybe expanding the nightmare world a little bit more by making it, bringing it out into the reality by creating these nightmare creatures. But it seems like they kind of forgot to explain that part, which would have made them a little bit more interesting. Now, not to say they weren't bizarre looking and crazy and imaginatively weird and gross, but sometimes you kind of want a reason for them to be there. And I didn't get it. But they were gross. They're weird. I thought those, like the effects, I think were interesting this time around as well as in the first one, but with a lot less on the blood and more on just sort of the effects on the body.
Yeah. Yeah.
Those were pretty gross and cool at the same time. So.
I mean, I still think it's kind of one of the more famous or popular ones, but I think still one of my favorite scenes in the movie is, and one of my favorite Freddy moments actually, is the "you've got the body, I've got the brain" sequence, and Freddy ripping the top of his head off, and his brain is just like bubbling. That is nightmare fuel right there, and so that's one of my favorite scenes in all of the franchise.
Oh yeah, just but it was also like, here's another part where Freddy's getting a little bit more witty. There's a little bit more character, dialogue in there that's funny, but also terrifyingly creepy. Just like, oh man.
It's really part of the, where we get the now classic Freddy toying with the people before, he ends them.
Yeah. Not just running them down, not just chasing them, but just sort of teasing them and really playing on their thoughts and their fears and their,
like he can't kill Jesse right away because he's got plans for him.
He needs to use him for something.
Yeah, but don't fuck with him.
Yeah. Yes, he will. He will definitely do that. But yeah, I thought this was it's a fun installment to the franchise. There's some really cool moments, I think, that are pretty memorable. And yeah, but there's the big gay thing there. You can't get away from that, knowing now what we know. If you were to come in cold in this film, maybe you might not see it right away. But I think now audiences are savvier, or at least have a much more diverse, film watching background. So they would probably pick up on it a lot faster. than maybe the audience at the time did. Critics aside, because critics, of course, are going to look for everything that's going to
Right.
want to pick apart. But I think generally mainstream audiences were like, yeah, that's cool. Okay. Just no assuming anything and whatever until afterwards, and they're reading all these pieces on Entertainment Tonight, or in the Village Voice or New York Times, picking apart like how gay it was. It was pretty neat.
Hey, we deserve a gay horror movie, right?
We do. We
Or
deserve
a gay
final girl.
Yeah,
And,
yeah.
This is the mid '80s. I mean, there's not much choice out there, and if you're gonna have a gay horror movie, this is it. Like,
Yeah.
for the mid '80s. So
Yeah, I mean,
and I think it works.
So and that's it. That's what I kind of wanted to say here is just that for the nits that I will pick, I do feel like the franchise got righted as far as the rules pretty quickly after this movie. So this movie is just a fun installment. I do believe it's the most different of any of the other movies in the franchise. It kind of stands alone, and it's certainly the most disconnected from any of the other movies in the franchise, because even like 1 connects a lot more to 3 than 2 connects to 1, other than being in the same house, so it does feel like each movie after, there's something from the previous movie that carries over, at least in the beginning. And this one, and I'd say Wes Craven's New Nightmare,
Right,
which is just so different. Love it for its own thing. This is a movie that I will still revisit. I still like it enough to give it a watch from time to time.
Interesting that for both of these movies, both of the ones that you mentioned, 2 and New Nightmare, they both involve Freddy coming out of the dream world and being fully physically realized.
And I'll tell you, like, I like that aspect in 1, but not in the other.
Yeah. Well, 1 has Wes Craven writing and directing it, and the other one does
yes. And Wes Craven's reasons for it are fantastic. This, I just don't think they knew what Freddy was supposed to be completely yet.
Yeah. But again, I'm absolutely glad that they made this film. And I think since rewatching it for this episode, my appreciation for it has done nothing but grow. And my appreciation for the portrayal of Jesse, the importance of this film in sort of like a camp horror history of cinema, I think those are all extremely important. And if this did not get made, then we also wouldn't have had the rest of the franchise, really. So I think this is a pivotal film for Nightmare on Elm Street. And I think anybody who's on the fence about liking this movie, like they're ambivalent to it, like they don't hate it, but they also aren't sure if they like it yet, to seek out both the documentary, the big documentary, Never Sleep Again, that's about all of them, which is great if you have like 4 and some change hours to set aside. But that's great. And it also is the first one that brings up the issue of whether it was intentionally gay or not. But then also, of course, Scream, Queen, which is all about Mark Patton and, his coming to terms with not just the film's legacy, but also, his relationship to people in the production and to the character itself. So I think they're both really good, and it might change your mind about this movie, watching again with a new perspective.
And hey, if you don't have HBO and you want to catch these again, they just released the entire franchise on 4K, that you can buy it as a set for it's $100, which I don't think is bad, because it also comes with the digital copies and stuff. But I have them all on DVD, and then I have A Nightmare on Elm Street and Freddy vs. Jason on Blu-ray, and then I have the first 3 and Freddy vs. Jason on digital, and I'm like, I don't know if I can justify
even more
buying the 4K discs, but if I find it used sometime for like $60, I'll pick it up.
And that's one of those things. I have been toying with the idea of getting back into doing more physical media. And this year alone, there's really been some amazing collections that have been, printed or have come out. Hammer Films with their newly released 4K version of Curse of Frankenstein. I mean, this entire, Nightmare on Elm Street collection. Just a lot of really gorgeous sets that have come out there. But hey, well, thank you so much for coming into the Bear Cave and talking about this movie because, one, it encouraged me to rewatch it and reevaluate how much I actually do enjoy it more than I thought I didn't. But it's really cool. And hopefully this will introduce or encourage people to go and give it a chance. Go and watch it again or watch it for the first time if they hadn't.
Well, obviously, thanks for having me back again. And I'm sure we'll get together again soon.
You've just listened to another episode of the Bear Cave of Terror, and if you haven't seen A Nightmare on Elm Street 2, Freddy's Revenge, or after listening to us are struck with an irresistible compulsion to watch it again, it's streaming on HBO Max, and of course it's available digitally, like we just mentioned, in a new box set, 4K Blu-ray, and it's gorgeous, and even though expensive, may be worth it. But it's also available, of course, digitally and in other forms. So, Mike, if listeners would like to get in touch, how would they do that?
Best place is to find me at all the socials for the Real Game Movie Show. So just Blue Sky, Instagram, and Facebook, all at Real Game Movie Show, REEL. Any of the comment sections or contact from there, I'm the one who answers them. So you can check us out and get a hold of me there.
Awesome. And you can also follow the Bear Cave of Terror on Blue Sky or Instagram at Bear Cave of Terror, all one word, or send an email to bearcaveofterror@gmail.com. A list of sources will be available in the show notes if you'd like to learn more about A Nightmare on Elm Street 2, including those documentaries that we mentioned. And remember, if your school bus starts booking it towards the desert outside of town, just make use of that emergency exit door. Have a good night, everyone.
There's something inside of me. And last night it made me go to my sister's room. And tonight with Lisa on the cabana, it started to happen again.
I think you are seriously losing it, bro.
I'm scared, Grady. Something is trying to get inside my body.
Yeah, and she's female and she's waiting for you in the cabana. And you want to sleep with me.